Two top immunologists at the FDA, including the head of the FDA's Office of Vaccines Research and Review, have just quit, in part because of the Biden administration's decision to promise boosters to the public without first clearing it with the FDA. And now you got to remember, this administration came into power with a promise to, quote, follow the science. In fact, that was one of their prime charges against President Trump, that he wasn't doing that. So they're leapfrogging over the FDA's vaccine experts. Seems a lot like yet another reversal of a Biden commitment. For more on this, Bill McGurn, Wall Street Journal columnist and a Fox Business contributor. Bill, good to see you. Thanks for coming in. So follow the science unless it's politically inconvenient at the time. It's hard to avoid hypocrisy on this one.
Yeah, it is. But this is the way government works. Look, I mean, it seems to me there are two issues that the people who resigned had. One is that the Biden administration wanted to make these boosters available before the FDA had signed off. The other is, I believe they did it on the basis of the CDC giving the go-ahead, so there's some kind of turf battles there. Yeah. But again, it just shows you that these cliches like follow the science are a lot easier to say than adhere to in this. And I just add, the worst thing about this is right now, the priority needs to be to get people vaccinated. And anything that takes away from that, I think, is really damaging. And if people now think, well, the scientists haven't signed off, it's not safe, it's gonna further harm the efforts to get people vaccinated.
But you know, Bill, the thing that interests me most politically about all this is the fact that the sort of crisis is an opportunity mindset that the Democrats have had with regard to COVID, whether it's Biden running for president on COVID or a lot of governors and mayors around the country using it as power despite their hypocritical violation of their own tenets. It might have gotten close to reaching a limit, their ability to milk this crisis for their own political power. Am I too optimistic on that?
Yeah. No, I think you're right, but that's because there's a difference between accusing the incumbent president of all this stuff, of all these problems, you know, from the safety of your basement during a campaign, and actually being the president and having to have a coherent message on this. And I think, unfortunately, the messages got very blurred. Yeah. And I don't think this kind of thing is going to persuade the people who have not yet got their shots to go out and get them.
Coherence in the Biden presidency, that doesn't mix. I mean, that doesn't go together. Let me just ask, more hypocrisy now, because President Trump, as most people remember, was impeached on the basis of a phone call. Turns out Biden had a phone call of his own back in July with the then president of Afghanistan, July 23rd. Let me just read to you a transcript of that, or a part of it anyway. I need not tell you the perception around the world and in parts of Afghanistan, I believe, is that things are not going well in terms of the fight against the Taliban. And there is a need, whether it is true or not, he said, there is a need to project a different picture. Now, he's advising this Afghan president to lie, if necessary, to get that message across, but also misleading the nation, misleading our nation about whether or not Afghans had the possibility of defending themselves, because he spent several weeks, if not months, doing that.
Yeah, I mean, look, he told us very forcefully back in July that he was confident the Afghan government would not fall, that they had the resources to go on. Right. We weren't going to see helicopters flying around our embassy rooftops. None of that was true. I think it gets to the larger thing, David. What we really need is we need a lot of answers. Joe Biden has made a lot of conflicting claims. He claimed he would get everyone out of Afghanistan. And I would like to hear other people under oath tell us what the president knew and when he knew it, because there's a lot of contradictions out there, and it's had terrible human consequences for people. Look, the people that we've left behind right now, they're hostages, right? They may be unmolested, you know, in their house and not paraded around like the Iranian students paraded our hostages, but they're hostages. And I fear that the Biden administration has handcuffed itself to certain agreements with the Taliban already because they're afraid of what they'll do to our people that we left behind.
And I don't think Americans are going to forget. I just had a session with Joe Concha on that, whether Americans are not the same as they were 40 years ago as far as that. I think Americans will, particularly if we begin to get any word, which hopefully we will, about the condition of those hostages, as I think you rightly call them. Very quickly, Bill, we got to run, but your paper has an editorial today by Joe Manchin saying why I will not support spending another $3.5 trillion. I have trouble betting on the spine of Joe Manchin, who's one of just two Democrats who may oppose this, but this is pretty definitive.
Yeah, no, it's pretty definitive, but you want to know whether he'll agree to $2.5 trillion or $2 trillion. I think the whole thing is a bad idea, and it would be nice if someone could stand up to it, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And so I'm kind of looking for all the exits here. What are the ways to get out of it? And I think Joe Biden will certainly have to give up the big ticket, $3.5 trillion. But if he gets 3, if he gets 2, that's still a big victory. And I don't think we should spend it. Frankly, I think the infrastructure bill itself is a waste of money.
Well, there's a lot of stuff
and we
in it
shouldn't
that
be
is.
spending that. But to spend this on top of it, to permanently alter the economy and our incentives and so forth, I think it's going to be a disaster.
Not to mention the inflation tax, which has already hit most Americans. Bill, good to see you. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.